So right now in the Google spreadsheet, we have three for unsafe passage. So O'Neill, Priya, Thompson are on unsafe passage.
Are we doing a runner-up or no?
We can. Again, I think we can select one here. I just want to confirm with them. So I can't guarantee right now that it'll stick. Just again, I don't know where it's not within the rules of ours, but I know it's in the rules of others.
Yeah, I was with Unsafe Passage with the Father's Journey as a runner-up.
Okay. So we're pretty unanimous here in unsafe passages, the doc of the year.
Yeah.
All right. Students, we could lock that one in. If you guys want to discuss why, but I feel like we had a really good discussion on it when we watched it in short form. But maybe for the sake of this recording, real quick, why overall holistically, why it just stood out. Again, within the definition of the category, it's an award that recognizes a documentary or series that achieved a high standard of quality in photography, editing, and overall storytelling that is unmatched by any other documentary in the division. Selection as documentary of the year honors excellent, and most importantly, it serves to raise the standards of the industry. Mr. Thompson, why does this documentary do all of that?
Unsafe Passage was just epic. You felt like everyone doing this work, and that includes the journalists who are along for the ride. You felt like they were in danger. They're getting calls from the Libyan Coast Guard, like, stop doing this, or there's going to be consequences if we have to tell you one more time. I mean, they're doing amazing work under threat. They're saving lives because people are being shot at and hit with sticks and falling into the ocean. So, what's at stake is just, it's an immense amount at stake, and human life is at stake. And then, but you also get to appreciate the humanity of every person coming off this boat, and you just see this relief on their face. When they go from being certain they're going to die to seeing some hope. And that transformation was incredible. And then you start to see the complex life experience on a boat that's completely packed with other people in a very stressful situation. And it covered the entire gamut of religious convictions and happiness and conflict and their connection to their families, that, there was this, it was just so tense because all they wanted to do was talk to their families, and they couldn't. And so that was another big payoff when they could finally reach out to their families. So, I mean, I could just go on and on about how amazing this documentary was. So it definitely stood above and beyond, I think, everything else we saw.
Miss Matthew, will not have you go last this time.
I'm just looking at sort of the description for doc of the year, and in, high standard of quality in photography, the diversity of shots in this piece was just incredible, from the kind of shaky camera from when they're talking to the people are trying to get them to forget this whole operation, to the beautiful shots of the ocean and the drone shot overhead of the ship, to the interviews, the really intimate interviews, to the group settings, from eating to prayer time, all the different sort of cultures. Just this one shot sticks in my head of the guy who made a time thing from the, whatever we call it, the hourglass from the water bottle, and just the intimacy to the photographer knew when to get up close in someone's face and when to really hone in on the intimacy and when to step back. And just the quality of and diversity of photography for me stands out more than anything else that we saw. The editing was really smart and really above par, and the storytelling was just unmatched to anything that we saw. And then in terms of raising the standards of the industry, I mean, this was a story and a topic that has huge, cultural and historic significance for the time that we're living in. So as a sort of holistic, again, presentation, I thought that this hit all of the marks. Again, like I would raise as a producer, I would, maybe ask some questions about sort of like where the women and the children are. But from a photojournalism standpoint, I thought this was like a 10 out of 10, like across the board.
Rocky.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with both of you. I was just so captivated by this whole story from beginning to end. I could have watched another hour or two of this. I could have watched the whole series, really. And it was very thoughtful and honest. I don't think like they didn't try to put any kind of narrative. Like you could really tell that they were just there and they felt like flies on the wall there. And I think Nathan Thompson, he brought up that scene where there's people praying and fighting at the same time. And so I loved how honest and raw it was. It wasn't trying to push anything anywhere. And I like that it kind of left you wanting to know more. And, hopefully a good documentary inspires, at least to me, inspires me to want to learn more about a subject or to dive into that subject more. And it did that for me on this one. Like I immediately, when we took our break, I Googled it. I was like, what happened at the end of the day, So with all the points that everybody else made, I also felt like this was a 10 out of 10.
And then our personal Superman, Mr. Nathan O'Neill.
Yeah, I mean, it was nothing short of a harrowing, emotional roller coaster from the very beginning to the end. Visually, it was just like a feast of micro stories within the bigger story, and you just see it all kind of unfolding from the moment that they are on this dinky little boat where who knows if they would have survived very long if they weren't recovered by these rescuers or by the Libyan government. And then you kind of see, there's an image that I remember when they're all kind of lining up to get processed, and they're handing out masks to everybody, and there's a guy that walks up and he just like breaks down because he's just like, he sees like a friendly face, and a visible just sigh of relief from what he's gone through, at least as far as that sense of hope, right? But yeah, I mean, it was from the very beginning. I had that kind of that calm sense of urgency, and then it built up, and then you're in the throes of it, and you think there might be something tragic or terrible that happens, and then you start to break that down, and you start to meet all these different characters. From the visual perspective, I really appreciated just how some of those interviews were conducted, where they didn't feel like they were staged, stand up, get here, look this direction. It was so organic. And I felt that you can't ask for more than just to kind of be in the room and not feel like it was staged in some sense. And that's what this did.
Well said. I'm trying to decide if we should do a runner-up or not, because it just feels like this one was just so far and away from above the rest that maybe there shouldn't be a runner-up. Thoughts, consensus?
My only concern is that we're going to get into the Rittenhouse arguing again, because it is like two very different styles of photojournalism. I mean, this one was like original video, and the diversity of shots again was just so incredible. And again, like 10 out of 10, like in every sort of like category in Doc of the Year. For me, the Rittenhouse one was just a really sophisticated use of like visuals and like using sort of visual journalism in like a very sophisticated way. But it's almost like comparing apples to oranges. I mean, I can see like Raquel's point of like, the intersection of fatherhood was just super compelling as well. But if I had to choose between the two of them as a runner-up, I would have it would be a really hard decision for me because they are so very different.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I'm just curious, Thompson, what would your runner-up be?
I would go Rittenhouse so that we could give a nod to the different styles and acknowledge that pieces like that have incredible journalistic value. And there is still a very important visual component to it. And there were firsthand accounts in that piece. So yeah, if Intersection hadn't used autofocus, I'd be like, let's go. Number 2. like I can't give it a top tier.
Autofocus is like the death of so many things.
Don't
Preach.
do that.
I'll
Don't do that.
I'll just say that. Preach.
Yeah.
Clark Kent, who would your runner-up be?
Well, that's tough because I mean, like Intersection is such like a story-driven piece, right? And I really do appreciate that and how easily digestible it was. But then Rittenhouse is a behemoth of something that, as far as like the work that went into that to make it so seamless, I just feel like that is like on the cutting edge of where this is headed, right? And if we're looking to raise the standards of the industry, I feel like that would probably be more inclined to.
Rocky, would you be okay with Rittenhouse being a runner-up?
Yes, and then that little yes, but yes, it's just that little part of me that's that is also saying, you know, is raising the standards of the industry, giving importance to focusing on community too. And I see both sides. I feel like I have an angel on one side and a devil on the other, because when I look at the Rittenhouse piece, like what happened visually is cutting edge. Like I felt that also with Day of Rage. I feel like they're like part of the same family, and I'm seeing it like kind of come together, because it's like, how do we use all this content that is being created through everybody having a phone in their hand everywhere they go? And I feel like that's kind of a leg that is now an appendage that's starting to grow in the industry. Like that's something that we're going to keep seeing, and it's going to keep evolving. And so I think it is cool to, like what you said, Nathan, like give a nod to that. But then I also like fear, it's like I have this fear of like the NFTs, like do we lose that sense of giving importance to those small stories in our backyard that at the end of the day become the stories that I feel like really move and transform people? So that is the angel and the devil on my back, and I don't know what to do about it.
I mean,
Yes,
like,
if Rittenhouse had used autofocus, would change your opinion?
Nathan's a savage. He just went in.
A little bit.
no, I'm halfway joking about autofocus. I mean, I thought that piece is incredible. But you know, I mean, I think we did validate it. We gave it a first place in long form, you know,
Yeah,
and so I think we totally validated that small story.
yeah.
That small yet big story.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel good about having Rittenhouse as the. I almost wish I had a different name. I like don't want to give Rittenhouse anything, but I want documentary something. But yeah, I can definitely concede to that.
All right, then let's do that. Let's write down an honorable mention, and then I will confirm that we can award that. So students, first place documentary of the year, not first place, the documentary of the year is Unsafe Passage, and a runner-up / honorable mention would go to Reconstructing the Shootings. There. Took out that name.
Also, students, what is your pick? I want to know.
See, funny that you picked the well, now I'm forgetting what it's called, but the first place one, because that was mine also. So you guys did a good job.
Which first place one out of all of the unsafe passage one?
Yes, unsafe
Okay,
passage.
cool.
That was my first. So I agree.
Awesome.
Wait, oh, so I had to unmute myself. But for me, I definitely think Unsafe Passage really was the cream of the crop because I'm looking for stuff that's going to like, I was one of the judges who said earlier, like raise awareness to the human condition. I really feel like that's like the ultimate purpose of journalism is just to like expand the mind. But of the other interesting note, I do agree with what Natalie said and how like what the New York Times has been doing with the Day of Rage and with the Rittenhouse like stories, that is the future where that is where the industry is going. They're setting the standard for like the visual investigations. So cool what they're doing there. So that those were like my three favorites.
I agree. Like in a post-truth world, I feel like after watching those, you're like, no, there's truth.
Yeah.
We just saw it. You know?
That's the other thing why I had ranked the New York Times pieces so highly, because in an area where those events are in such dispute, being able to go in and with such authority and like through such reportage to be able to definitively say what happened and what did not happen is just more of what we need. So yeah, big props to that. I would love to work on stuff like that.
I mean, I think you can. I think you just whip out your phone and start
Yeah.
going out and start editing all of your friends.
Exactly.
But that is cool because like that's a different kind of truth. It's not just one person. It's like you're getting an entire experience from everyone's accounts because everyone will focus their lens on something different because we all see the world differently. So when you piece that all together, like whoever stitched all this together should be given like an Academy Award. Like I'm like, who sat there and literally just, you know, like, oh, that was amazing to me.
Yeah. Mine far and away was Unsafe Passage. And exactly what you just said, I said while watching Unsafe Passage, I was like, this should win an Oscar. Like, this is incredible. And then for me, my runner-up was Day of Rage, which, you know, Day of Rage and reconstructing the shooting were like neck and neck. But I remember watching Day of Rage whenever like it popped up in my feed and they had posted that, and just I'm pretty sure I shared it. I'm 90% sure I shared it with Priya, and she was like, "Oh, I've seen it already." And so I was like, this was incredible. So Nathan,
maybe our stuff is already locked in, but are we going with Rittenhouse? Are we going with Rittenhouse because of the interviews, or are we just gonna? Because I liked Day of Rage better than Rittenhouse personally.
oh no, don't let me sway you.
Is that illegal? Right?
It's kind of one, it's kind of locked in already, and then two, I just voiced my opinion.
But I mean,
but
I did like Day of Rage better because like before I was leaning towards Rittenhouse because we talked about, oh, it has the interviews in it.
Right.
But if we're trying to give a nod to this new type of overarching overview, you know, break it down style, I do feel like Day of Rage did it better with all the freaking maps and like.
I feel like they're going to show that documentary in schools just to explain like what happened. Like it was a really good piece of like just historical evidence. I feel like.
I think that piece was even more comprehensive than Rittenhouse in terms of how many people were involved.
Ray's like, don't do this to me.
But I'm not.
True.
The thing is I'm not making that decision based on. I'm not like, oh, I'm doing that because of Ray. It's like we're still having an ongoing conversation about how we're justifying, picking one thing over the other. And even if it wasn't necessarily like in person doing an interview with people, we're just working through how valid is this in the best of photojournalism competition. I feel like that's a really important conversation since this is the first time the category's been in existence.
Yeah.
If the judges are in consensus, and as Nathan stated, you've come to this conclusion and we're already teetering there, then go ahead. Priya O'Neill. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm
Priya.
thinking about this. I'm pretty sure I've seen Day of Rage before this whole thing. And I'm a big fan of these visual forensic investigations because I do think this is the future of investigative journalism. And side note, I used to work at the Washington Post, and there's like a unit of people that literally work on these. Like it's usually like a 5 to 6 person team, and the hours and amount of work that it takes to put these together. I mean, and it's fact check after fact check after fact check. So, I mean, I can attest, I have a really good friend who works on this team at the Washington Post who puts together these types of things. And so I agree, the Rittenhouse piece and Day of Rage to me are almost neck and neck. I think for Day of Rage, I was thinking a lot about Nate O'Neill's point about sort of the no original interviews, but also like Nathan Thompson's point of whether it would have diminished what we saw. I think in the Rittenhouse case, the interviews did elevate it. And it was also just another use of video that, was sort of like diverse in the Rittenhouse piece. I mean, they had graphics, they, repurposed all this video, they used video evidence to build out this timeline, but also like the interviews did like elevate it that much more. I don't think it would have been the case with Day of Rage, not that they could have ever gotten interviews with people thereafter. So, I am sort of still, those are like my thoughts. I thought they were sort of like neck and neck. I think from a viewer perspective, I would say Day of Rage was superior in some sense, but also just thinking about photojournalism and like, thinking about sort of like the diversity of shots and use of video. I think Rittenhouse had the opportunity to do that a little better because they had the interviews to work with and to edit with. And so those are my thoughts.
Yeah, just looking at like the description for Doc of the Year, like I'm reading it, it says documentary or docuseries that achieved a high quality or high standard of quality in photography. And in Day of Rage, I don't know if I see that versus, anything original. So I don't know how to judge that. Whereas at least with Rittenhouse, that's kind of my logic, because originally, like I said, the first go around, I was like, oh, Day of Rage, number one. And then we continued to watch more, and I was like, okay, well, maybe not now. So.
Yeah, I think those are great points because, like thinking back, some of the interviews were incredibly powerful that we talked about, like some of the commentary, like he got a really good depth out of that. We were all like, whoa.
Yeah.
But that first person perspective did really add more to, the overview and the more forensic style. So yeah, I'm down with it.
All right. Yeah. Let's not flip flop.
Okay. Ray is terrified over there. He's like,
I was like, oh,
man,
man,
what have I done?
Yeah, did I just
I haven't seen Ray breathe in the last 2 minutes. You guys were talking.
Starting to look like Thanos, just like.
I had to put Ray on the hot seat. It's fun.
That's what he does. I appreciate it. Oh, I'm itchy. All right, I'm very proud of you guys. Yeah, I'm gonna state my opinion now because the vote is locked in.